100 players and 10 coaches, and we figured with you sitting right here, we would reveal the first coach on this list, Paul Brown, the man they named the Browns after. The legendary coach made coaching a science. He built a dynasty in Cleveland, compiling a record of 167, 53, and 8, and winning the NFL championship in 1950, 1954, and 1955.
The game's greatest coach and the grandest guy in the world, Paul Brown.
I'll turn to you first, Bill Belichick. Why do you think Paul Brown made this list and is the first for us to announce?
Because he's the greatest coach in the history of professional football. Clear and simple. Everything that we do today, everything that I do today, Paul Brown did. It all started with Paul Brown. And he took football from being a sport to a profession. He made it professional.
He was a genius, every aspect of the game. And so I'm a person, I like great thinkers. And he was as great as anybody I've ever run into that coached the game.
Bill Belichick, the 8-time Super Bowl champion as a head coach and assistant coach in this league. As a head coach, most all-time playoff wins, 31. Most all-time Super Bowl wins, 6. Third on the all-time list in terms of career wins, including playoffs, behind only Papa Bear Hallis and Don Shula.
Look, fellas, it's just about doing our job. Come on, fellas, just do your job. Just do your job. Just do our job and get on to the next play.
I know, Coach Belichick, you like talking about your personal accomplishments and your legacy, like the proverbial, use that phrase again, head hole. But if I was not asking you this question, I wouldn't be doing my job. What do you think of being mentioned with Paul Brown and the others that are to come on the NFL 100 all-time team coaching list?
You know, it's an incredible honor. It's incredibly flattering. Those coaches were all my idols. They were all the ones that I looked up to. And we all know this is the ultimate team sport. And I've had the great fortune to coach so many great players and have so many great coaches and scouts. It's really an honor to all the people that I've worked with and been able to coach.
This is a guy who has lived the ultimate football life. I mean, you know, from back in the days, and he knew Johnny Unitas when he was a little boy, and his father, Steve, who had a huge impact, I'm sure, on your life, to the days of coaching for $25. And you learn the game. Let's start at the bottom. Let's work our way to the top. That's why he is who he is.
One of the biggest challenges really has been just the evolution of the game. The game's changed, and that's forced everyone to change. And I think learning to adapt and learning to adjust, and I really believe that there's a way to win. You just have to figure it out.
Every year, it's ripped apart, and you start all over, and you bring in a bunch of new guys, and in September, they're always, no offense, a very average football team, because they're trying to do everything, right? He has already played 20 different defenses in the month of September, and other teams have played too. But by the time we get to December and January,
look out.
Then they don't know what they're going to get. The Rams had no idea what they were going to throw at them in the Super Bowl. And Sean McVay will tell you that. They had no idea what they were going to get. So how do you practice for it?
Good pressure. That's it, good pressure.
And that's part of the genius.
Well, and yeah, I think fundamentally it really comes back to, you can go all the way back to a few hundred years BC. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Attack weaknesses, utilize strengths, and figure out what the strengths are on your team. There's some things you have to protect, find the weaknesses of your opponent, and attack. You can't win a war by digging a hole. You got to attack. So you have to figure out where you want to attack, how you want to attack, and that changes week to week, game to game.
Well, Joe, I think you'll think this is pretty darn great, too. One last name left to reveal tonight, and it's your head coach, Chuck Noll. Noll was the HC for 23 seasons in Pittsburgh. After going 1-13 in his first year, he led the Steelers to 4 Super Bowl titles in a 6-year span, and he now joins fellow coaches Paul Brown and Bill Belichick on the all-time team.
I was a holdout my rookie year, and I came in to the team meeting, And he said, guys, I want you to meet our first-round draft choice, Joe Green. I stood up, hi, fellas. My voice cracked. And he says, our goal is to win the Super Bowl. The prior year, we had won 2. The year before that, we had won 2. So there was some snickering in the back room. Chuck found the guy that was snickering. He was gone. Eventually, he started to put together, through the draft, some players that was like-minded. We became believers.
Chuck was a smart man.
Yes.
He was a very smart man.
Yes.
The last game he won was when I was in Cleveland in '91. That was the last game he coached, and I mean, I was a nobody, and but he treated me with a lot of respect, which I appreciated.
It's Joe GIBBS, the 3-time Super Bowl champion head coach of the Washington Redskins, 16 seasons there, and again, the only coach in NFL history to win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks.
Let's hit it rolling now. Let's earn this thing today. Nothing gets away from us. Let's earn it today, okay?
Well, he was a great competitor of ours with the Giants. We went head-to-head twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year in the playoffs. Joe was a very disciplined coach, really popularized the one-back offense. He really believed in the running game, but they threw it down the field as well.
Good protection again, going deep. He's got Clark. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. The dramatic domination of Super Bowl 26.
Each one of you has a small piece of this trophy today.
Now it's time to give Papa Bear Halas his due. He is, of course, one of the coaches on the NFL 100 team.
He's known to millions as the Papa Bear, and he is revered and admired as the kindly godfather of pro football, which he certainly is.
He coached the Bears for 40 seasons, winning 6 NFL titles.
The Chicago Bears beat the Giants for the NFL championship.
And his record mark of 324 wins stood for nearly 3 decades. I give you the floor here, Coach.
The founder of the league. I mean, really one of the founders of the league. Just a tremendous guy. I got to know him a little bit as a kid just because of my dad. Mr. Halas was really a very personable guy in spite of his kind of rough, and gruff background there. He was always a very nice, generous man. I think he just epitomized that hard-nosed, tough Midwestern football that he believed in, and his Bears, reflected his ownership and coaching.
And another coach we're revealing is just like you on the all-time list. Former Giants defensive coordinator who went on to win multiple Super Bowls as an NFL head coach from America's team. It is Tom Landry. Landry had 20 straight winning seasons and led the Cowboys to 2 Super Bowl titles.
Cowboy coach Tom Landry getting a ride off on the shoulders of his team, the Dallas Cowboys, and the champions of the National Football League.
One of the things that was so remarkable about Coach Landry was just his innovative and creative philosophy on both offense and defense. When he was at the Giants, he created the flex defensive front, which was very intricate in the footwork and so forth, where he had the tackle, one tackle and end up, one tackle and end back off the line of scrimmage, strong or weak.
We just try to offset some of our linemen to give us in a better position to control the types of blocking that they use today.
Coach Landry's flex defense was designed with the intent, number one, of keeping the middle linebacker free.
We protect our middle linebacker. We've got to keep the big men off of him a little bit, and we think the flex does that.
They were a dominant team for the 20 years that they had all those winning seasons.
And it's the man who founded the pre-NFL Packers in 1919, Curly Lambeau. Lambeau was the first coach to make the forward pass an integral part of the offense. He played halfback for 11 years to boot. Also served as coach and general manager. He led the Packers to 6 NFL championships. Bill, I give you the floor on Curly Lambeau.
Well, Curly Lambeau is a very interesting story. He went to Notre Dame and played under Coach Rockne. Got to Notre Dame, got pneumonia as a freshman, ended up going back to Green Bay. He learned Rockne's offense when he was at Notre Dame, and that was really the offense that he implemented when he got back to Green Bay. And then in the 30s, Lambeau really opened up his offense and made the passing game more of a part of it. Of course, that was when they got Don Hudson in 1935. In the 40s, they had Cecil Isbell, Cecil Isbell was one of the great passers in the league, even though it was a short period of time. And then they got Clark Hinkle, and Hinkle was a great runner. So Curley used Clark Hinkle as the tailback when they wanted to run the ball, and they used Cecil Isbell as the tailback when they wanted to pass the ball.
You know, if you studied coaches, you might win some Super Bowls. Seriously. If you knew anything about anybody other than yourself, you know.
Wow. Yeah, Tony, you have a few minutes on Cecil Isbell, correct?
You know, I like about Curly Lambeau. I remember the NFL films. It was a cold day at Lambeau Field.
That's right. That's the Lambeau. That's the Lambeau. And then speaking of Lambeau Field, obviously, and the Green Bay Packers and championships, no brainer that Vince Lombardi is one of the coaches on the all-time team.
Let's move a little bit now. Let's go. Let's get ourselves ready here.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody tackling.
Winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. In our business, there is no second place. Either you're first or you're last.
Never had a losing season, 5 NFL championships, 2 Super Bowl titles with the Packers, and of course his name is on the trophy that gets handed out to the winners of the Super Bowl every year, Bill.
I can't wait to hear this one.
Nor can I.
Well, I think the thing that stands out about Lombardi was just his attention to detail and perfection.
The big word in professional football is execution. All players succeed on the blackboard, but men make them work.
Anybody who has the idea that just to play or just to take part, and that's all that's necessary, I think he's in the wrong business. I think he's in the wrong country. Let me put it that way. I think one of the things that made America great is to try to be the best in everything that they do. And the best, again, is signified by winning.
That's the best one right there. That was the best one right there.
They were a running team. They had Jim Taylor, they had Paul Hornung. They ran the ball. They won with toughness. They won with execution. They had a lot of good defensive players as well. And the Green Bay sweep, no matter how many times you watch it, which really it was Curly Lambeau's sweep out of the single wing, except they used the quarterback in the single wing instead of the pulling guard as the second puller.
If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here, and try to run this play in the alley.
The thing that was amazing about that is they always gained yards. You could look at the play and say, all right, here it comes the Green Bay sweep, and they're gaining yards, and they just did it consistently, and then they'd run off tackle, and then they'd run Taylor up the middle. And it wasn't about a lot of plays, but it was great execution, and then when they had to have it, Starr could throw it, and he threw it very efficiently. They played good defense. You had to go out there and beat them. They were a hard team to beat, especially in Green Bay.
Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. And the Green Bay Packers will be third-time National Football League champions on a 12 below zero day here at Lambeau Field in Green Bay.
Well, I'm mandated to ask this question, certainly because the forum in which we're currently sitting, and I don't think anybody in my business would ask you this question in a normal question and answer setting and expect an answer. So I'm going to ask it.
So should I revert to my press conference answer? I kind of straight around it?
Just so you know, we are going to move on to somebody associated with Cincinnati after this answer. So when you hear you referred to as the modern day Lombardi, what do you think of when you hear that?
I really haven't thought about it much, Rich.
You went right to the press conference. I love it.
No, I mean, flattering, but because you are aware that people do refer to you as that, correct?
I mean, I don't really spend a lot of time worrying about that.
You got nothing coming. You knew it when you asked the question. You had nothing coming.
Right now, the penultimate coach that we're about to name on the all-time team is a man who, again, was perfect in Miami back in 1972. He coached in 6 Super Bowls, winning 2 of them. He is the all-time winningest coach in the history of the NFL, Don Shula.
He becomes the all-time winningest coach in the history of the National Football League.
347 wins. Let's start with that.
Right.
It's a lot. You know, I remember Coach Shula. I would watch Coach Shula's TV show every week with the Baltimore Colts growing up in Annapolis, and Corralling the Colts was the show. And I always look forward to Coach Shula's breakdowns and his interviews with the star players there.
We started out, we had some great licks hit. This is what we want to see. Great by the defense, great by the offense.
I think Coach Shula really kind of set the standard for all of us that followed. 347 wins. I mean, that says it all.
He had the greasy teams where they were Zonka and Kick and Morris, and they ran the football predominantly and played defense. And then flipped it right around and had Dan Marino and Duper and Clayton, and had the same sort of ability to take that passing team and win with it. So I like Bill, to be honest with you. He can take a lot of different styles of play and win with all of them.
This man took the 49ers franchise to new heights with his West Coast offense. He helped propel the 49ers to 3 titles in a 10-year span, the legendary Bill Walsh.
He was not only a coach, he was like a father to me, and he took me under his wing. I love you. And he gave me the opportunity to just live a dream. And he could be your best friend, he could be your worst enemy. And he never let you felt like you had arrived. I had a game, a Monday night game against the Los Angeles Rams. I had over 10 catches, over 200-something yards, 3 touchdowns. And Bill called me up to his office, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to call me up and pat me on my back. He said, great job. He called me up and he said, I want more from you.
What'd you think when, after that stat line, the coach called you and said, I need more from you?
Yeah, you know what? I was very shocked, but I noticed that Ronnie Lott and also Joe Montana, they were walking up the stairs too. He knew how to get everything out of his players.
The number one thing I always felt like preparing for Coach Walsh was the first 15 plays. His team knew those plays. They knew what 6 was, they knew what 7 was, they knew what 8 was, and they could execute them very quickly and with a high efficiency because they practiced them over and over. Defensively, if you went out there like we did in 1984, my daughter was born, we played the 49ers Monday Night Football. And, you know, that's when I really found out. That's when I really got drilled by him. He went out, he came in there and he scripted, you know, the first 15 plays, and we were down 21-0 in the middle of the first quarter.
Montana rolling out, making it look awfully easy.
Amanda was, you know, about to be born that night, and I'm thinking to myself, I might as well leave right now because, and so I barely made it for, you know, for her birth after the game, but that's the way it was with the 49ers. If they got you early on that script and they got you going, and then you're like one play behind or one series behind, it could snowball and it could be just, you know, it could be brutal.
This has been a great, fun 6-week ride here at NFL Films. I give you guys some of the final words here.
You know, I've been a part of the kind of last 50 years of the first 100 years. And looking back on the first 50 years, you know, let's not forget what all those players and coaches did to pave the way for where the game is today, and the accomplishments that and the sacrifices that they made for the game of football to give us such a great foundation to build from. Over the last 50 years, I've seen the game change and evolve dramatically, and I think there are more changes to come. It'll be interesting to see where the game goes in the next 50 years. But in looking at the 100 players that we've unveiled here, the things that really stuck out to me were, number one, how unselfish these players were. They played for their team, they played for their teammates, they played to win. As it turned out, they got a lot of individual recognition because of that type of an attitude. Number two was the overall toughness of the team. You know, it seemed like every guy we talked about his toughness, his mental toughness, his physical toughness, just his mentality and the way he played the game. And then the players that we had on set, almost all of them referred to, at some point they felt that they had a chip on their shoulder, that somebody told them they couldn't do it. Somebody told them they couldn't be successful, or they weren't able to accomplish this or that. And that was a driving force. And you can see how motivated these players were to do things that they were being told that they weren't able to do. And you look at this list and say, like, how you can tell these guys that they can't do anything as great as they were, but that's what motivated them. And so those are kind of the 3 takeaways I took from this process, but it was a lot of fun and was very educational, and it's an experience I'll never forget.
Well, I could say that right back at you, too, because, I mean, virtually every guy that came here already in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, their busts have been on loan to us throughout this 6-week process, and they probably thought that they were done with all the accolades that they would accrue from their playing career. And one by one, they would come in here and look at the wall and see their name and their plaque go up there and be humbled more than ever before.
And the other thing, Rich, I thought almost every one of them at some point said, I can remember when I was a kid.
Yep.
Right? And somehow this game attached themselves to them, and it all came out when they looked at that wall.
It did. And some of the things that I learned, I had no idea that you informed me Jack Lambert got a leg up because the guy was in front of him in college, ran off with the Rolling Stones essentially to be a security member. And just LT being LT, showing up here, and just a lot of fun having Jim Brown and the other GOATs that have come by here, and of course on this show with Tom Brady and Roger Staubach and Brett Favre, just physically being here. It's just been a total blast.
And honestly, football fans got to see a side of Bill and a conversation from Coach Belichick that maybe they haven't seen before.
Now's the time to say you're going to be a member of the media from here on out. Now's your last chance.
Yeah, I'll pass on that for a little while, Rich.
Moving on to coaching. Hey, Bill Belichick, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. And Chris, you are just one of the best of all time, too. So it's great to have you here. Thank you for watching NFL 100's All-Time Team.